My name is Hilarie Rankin, and today we are going to discuss communication patterns and how they impact organizations. We will begin with a brief overview of the importance of communication and talk a little bit about the stated values and missions of my current organization. Then we will discuss an instance of miscommunication and its repercussions. This will lead us into how our patterns of communication help to develop the culture of an organization. Finally, we will reflect on my organization and its communication before planning on what I could do to improve the culture of my organization through communication. We all know that communication can play a large role in the success or failure of an organization. It also helps to shape staff perceptions of the facility. At my current organization, our values and mission statement place a high emphasis on excellent patient care. If you were to ask clinical staff if they thought that the patient care was the number one priority of management, you would likely receive a less than pleasant answer. This is due to the fact that clinical staff often feel unheard, and the actions of leadership tend to speak much louder than their daily conversations. Before we begin talking about patterns of communication, I just wanted to provide an example of miscommunication that can occur daily at my facility. Handoff between the ICU and ER is a notoriously common time for miscommunication. For example, when asking, did the patient receive their entire weight-based sepsis bolus? ICU nurses have been told, yes, they have. Then, upon arrival of the patient and after investigation, it turns out the patient only received a partial bolus. This kind of miscommunication can occur for several reasons. I've listed a few here for you on the slide, but part of the problem is the different charting systems that we utilize between the ER and the rest of the hospital, so we can't see what the ER nurses have charted on. The areas are also, both areas also tend to be pretty noisy, and the handoffs can be rushed because we've been very busy. The problem with all of this is that it can lead to a sense of distrust among the units. This has been happening at my facility in particular. And besides the sense of distrust that you get among the units and this hostility that the ER staff begins to feel when they bring patients to us, this can also be a potentially dangerous situation for patients. When talking about what our clinical staff discusses on a daily basis, the infrastructure and growth of our organization is not a common topic. But when we do talk about, our organization as a whole, a couple of themes kind of jump out to me. You hear a lot of nurses and doctors even discussing their distrust of the motives of upper management, and how their lack of clinical understanding prohibits them from really having an understanding of how their policies impact patient care. Although there is at times a sense of excitement because we have a lot of new cardiac stuff coming in and everyone's really happy to see it grow. My facility is working towards adding an obstetrics unit, and there's been a lot of talk about how there's a hesitancy to add this new specialty. The biggest issue here is the distrust of the upper management, and you can tell that just between all the communication that my facility has failed to provide a culture of safety to clinical staff. They don't feel like upper management hears them, that they will be disciplined for having ideas, and that no one really cares what you think anyway. This is going to prohibit innovation and growth because clinical staff don't feel like they can put their ideas forward to administration. As we talked about on the previous slide, the conversation in my workplace rarely focuses on the organization, but this needs to change if we want to see a culture change in our environment. When speaking about organization as conversation, the text tells us that it's important to talk about the organization in terms of how it reaches its goals, how it's maintaining its values in its daily operations. These kind of conversations help to establish a pattern in our organization that align with our values. When you say things over and over, it puts the idea into your head that is what's important and that's what the goal should be for everyone in the organization. When discussing patterns of relating, this is kind of how the conversations are carried out in your facility, whether you have face-to-face conversations with your managers, whether they're written conversations or meetings. And the way that we communicate with each other plays a big role in how we perceive our relationship. At my facility, the primary communication is still done via email, with the exception of one town hall meeting that we have once a quarter. The fact that we don't have many face-to-face meetings or get to have that human interaction with upper management kind of facilitates this ongoing, them versus us culture that we have, where it's clinical staff versus upper management who doesn't understand what we go through on a daily basis. When we talk about patterns of meaning, we're referring to the values in an organization and their mission and vision statements, and how our actions and our communications reflect these statements. I discussed earlier that the mission and value statements at my facility put a really high value upon patient care, and they mentioned organizational growth. They don't put a lot of stock into the physical growth, which is a good thing, I think, for a healthcare organization. The actions of our leadership team, they do a great job of conveying this message that patient safety is the biggest concern and excellent care, and we're going to grow and we're going to provide to this area. Northwest Georgia, we are one of the top hospitals in the area. However, their actions of understaffing the units and some of the policy changes that have been made recently that nurses and physicians both feel unsafe kind of undermine their attempt to emphasize that patient safety is their number one concern. When we talk about communication, it's important to keep in mind that communication consists of two separate processes, speaking and listening. When you're talking about speaking, this is what a person says and also how they say it. So your body language and your inflection. And you can't have a meaningful conversation with someone without being mindful of how you speak and what you're saying and what your actions mean to them. We also need to keep in mind that we have to be good listeners. We've all had conversations with people where you're listening, you're talking to them and they're truly not listening or engaging. So for our conversations to be meaningful and to make progress, you have to have both good listeners and good speakers. I talked about how my facility is lacking a culture of safety where it feels like ideas from clinical staff are shot down, and how this is going to impact our innovation going forward. Innovation is driven largely by collaboration between clinical and non-clinical staff in healthcare facilities. And I also want to speak briefly to you about the concept of emergence. This just means that the conversations in a facility can either perpetuate these ideas so we can continue to harp on the fact that administration doesn't listen, that they don't care what we think, that they don't have patient safety as their primary concern, or we can emerge new concepts by having more positive thoughts and speaking more positively about our leadership team. As I look back on the communication of my organization, I see that there are a few things. My leadership team does a great job of expressing that patient care is their number one concern. They do hear out clinical staff, although some clinical staff feel unheard. When I think back on it myself, I feel like they do take our ideas into account. They just do not have an understanding of why our ideas are important. The biggest problem here is that there's just such distrust from the clinical staff to the upper management that no one is truly doing a great job of communicating. We're not truly speaking, and I don't think we're truly hearing each other. So to change the story at my facility, there's several things that need to happen. Clinical staff need to get back into speaking about the organization in their daily conversation. We need to quit ignoring the fact that there's problems. We need to talk about what we can do to make it better. And we need to talk about the things that we're good at. It doesn't help to harp on the things that you're struggling with. We need to remind ourselves that we work in a good place, and this is going to help improve morale tremendously. It would help to have more face-to-face communication with management, and that's something that we could do ourselves. I think they make themselves open and available We just don't take the time to go and speak with them. So we need to try to have more face-to-face conversation with them. We need to help leadership understand that their actions and, their policy passing pertaining to clinical care right now is undermining or cutting away from their message that patient safety is important. I believe patient safety is important to those in upper management. They just do not see how their actions of understaffing units and writing policies is not helping the problem. We need to speak often and with passion about the core of our organization, which is excellent patient care, which is something I've already talked about. Every organization has its problems, but if we focus on the good things, the fact that we provide safe and quality care, I think you'll see a greater morale boost in the facility. Innovation is going to continue to follow us as a culture if we can begin to feel safe promoting new ideas. Communication plays a huge role in the culture growth of an organization. How not only what we speak about, but how we speak about them can help promote innovation. My current facility in the past had done a great job of having positive communication, but over the last few years, there's been this sense of distrust that has developed. But I believe with encouragement to the clinical staff and with having conversations with upper management, that we can start to change the culture of my facility by speaking more positively of what we have going on now and discussing ideas about how we can improve patient safety in the future.